Hi, I'm David, and I'm here to talk to you about cryptocurrency price analysis for Friday, February 22nd, 2019. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and EOS, all of which have performed admirably over the last week. But we're going to take a special look at Bitcoin as the market leader, see where it might be going after this rally, and I'm going to compare back to some observations I made a couple weeks ago about Q1 price action, historically speaking, see if Bitcoin's still on the same pace of what the patterns that I observed back then. So without further ado, don't forget that like and subscribe below. Let's get right to it. All right, here we have Bitcoin on the daily time frame. First off, looking at the news, there's no one major story I'm aware of, but there's a lot of good sentiment in the market right now. A lot of people think that have seen or are near the bottom, and that we're starting to get indications that Bitcoin's gearing up for the beginning of the next bull run. Now let's see. Current market cap is at about 70 billion, and we're just under 4,000 for average price. Here on Coinbase, we're a little below that, around 39.15. We can see what happened here is that we were in a descending channel, and we tested the upside, and we were able to break through, but then we got stopped out at about 4,000. Strong psychological level. Get a little better resolution on the 4-hour. And you can see where we broke through and got stopped out, and then we retested the top of the channel, and we're looking like we're gearing up to retest 4,000. Some optimistic things. We clearly had some pretty good support on the 200 moving average here. We broke out above the 100 moving average, which caused a bullish reversal. Now the 200 is above the 100. If we do break back into this channel, there's a very good chance we will find support on there at about around 35 to 3,600. And if we can retest and get above 4,000, then I'm going to invoke basically what I was talking about a couple weeks ago in my video about Q1 historical price action. Going back to the daily for that. So, for those who didn't watch the video, I had basically observed that in the first quarter of the last several years, there's a general pattern that tends to repeat itself, give or take. And that's that you tend to see a little bit of a run-up right after the new year, followed by a rough rest of January. And then usually February has another rally. And then often in March, we see that kind of taken back to end Q1 at or around the level we entered the year on. In the case of 2019, we're looking at around 3,800. So even if we are able to get above 4,000, if this pattern holds, and combined with the admittedly limited resistance we see here, but I'm thinking we're going to hit between 42 and 4,300. I'm not saying that's absolutely the highest we could go, but there's just not a combination of, in the patterns from historically other years, and from the technicals I'm seeing here, there's just not enough evidence to give me any reason to predict a higher high in the next month or so. Next up, Ethereum. Now, right off the bat, it's going to have somewhat of a similar pattern to Bitcoin, but there are some key differences I want to highlight. First let's talk about the news. Major news this week has to do with the core developer that left rather dramatically. It's sending a lot of ripples through the community. People are talking about it, but it's not exactly what we're here to talk about, except to point out that it hasn't really hurt the price as far as I can tell. And the general Ethereum project moves forward. It hasn't stopped it by any means. In a more optimistic turn, the trading volume is the highest it's been in over a year, meaning that somebody's coming in and trading Ethereum, and that's really positive to see. Here we have a market cap of about $15.5 billion, and we're trading at about $147. Here on Coinbase, a little lower, $144. So, first off, here's that same channel you saw with Bitcoin, but you'll notice that Ethereum spent a lot more time near the bottom of its channel for a while there. When it broke up pretty hard, though, and broke out of its channel pretty well. Moving to the 4-hour, you're going to notice a key difference from Bitcoin is that the moving averages are aligning quite nicely. We still have a bullish reversal, which is good. And they're aligning quite nicely with the top of the channel, which is giving me a lot of optimism that even if we do dip back to test the channel, we're not going to break back into it. There's a lot of resistance there. As for upside, it looks like we got, of course, stopped out at about 150, not unlike how Bitcoin got stopped out at 4,000. Looks like we're going to retest. If we can get above, I'm thinking that we're going to retest at similarly recent highs of around 160 is what I think we can probably look forward to. Higher than that, it becomes more of about a $10 at a time psychological game. And if we do fail, if we get knocked back down and we retest this channel, we're looking at, again, about maybe 115, 116 range. On to Litecoin, which has performed admirably along with the market, but even better, which is not uncommon. Litecoin often moves a little bit sooner, a little bit stronger than the market. Also, it might still have some momentum off of the Mimblewimble privacy coin news that came out a couple weeks ago that could be feeding the sentiment. And the market cap, we got about a 3 billion market cap, and we're trading just a little under $50. And on Coinbase, actually about the same, $49. So a little bit different story here than the other ones, the other two we looked at so far. More of a sideways channel with some deviations here and there. But when it broke out hard, it broke out fast. We then got stopped out on the 200-day moving average, but it didn't take us long to retest and push above. And we're now kind of somewhere in between, and we haven't really, it's not clear if we're going to retest up or down. We might see some more sideways action, but if we retest down, well, let's look at the 1 hour for a second, because I want to show you why I have a bit of optimism that even if we drop down, we have on the hourly, we've got two different moving averages giving us support, and historically they've provided pretty good support. So before we would even retest this channel, we'd have to punch through the 100 and 200 hour moving averages. And so I would say if we do take a drop, we're probably going to get stopped out or hold above 45, at least at first. At least I think we'd see some resistance there, some hesitation there. And then about $1 lower at 44 if we do drop through that. We'd have to get through both of those to test this channel, so I'm not immediately worried about that. As for upside, I'd like to go back to the daily. And there we're looking at this descending 100-day moving average. And that's going to, I'm thinking we're going to test that at around, probably around 55, maybe 56, but probably around that range. If we can get up to that and hold, then that's a really good sign. There's also some historical resistance there, so that's probably the upside we're looking at in the short term. And again, downside probably not worse than about 45. And so we come to EOS. Now, first of all, there's not a ton of news, but there's been some pretty positive news in that a report came out that 50% of EOS dApps are actually used on a daily basis, as opposed to only 10% for Ethereum. Now, Ethereum has more dApps on it than EOS, and this isn't as simple as this means EOS good, Ethereum bad, or anything like that. But it is a good sentiment for the EOS community that people are using the smart contracts, and the community seems to be alive and growing. On the market cap, we got about 3.5 billion. We're trading at about 385 average. On Binance, we're looking at currently about 393. So, again, similar story, but some changes. We did have a sideways channel that was there formed for a while. It was a little bit more sporadic, but it's pretty clearly defined. When we broke, like Litecoin, when we broke up, we broke hard. But unlike Litecoin, we weren't able to get above the descending 200-day moving average. Got rejected off of there. We look like we might be gearing up to test it again, sure enough. If we are able to, then it's maybe a bit optimistic, but we could, well, there's a few things. We could punch up. We could even test as high as the descending 100-day moving average at around, we'd probably hit it somewhere around 550. It's, again, very optimistic, but there's not a lot of resistance between here and there. So, and that's around there is where the resistance starts to kick in. That being said, we could test above and then just hold just above the 200-day, which would put us closer to around 415 to 420 kind of range. Now, if we break down, if we're not able to get above, I'm going to go to the 1 hour for that. So the moving averages don't align with the top of that channel as well for support. So we could test down to this 200 hour, and if we hold there, we're probably looking around 325 to 330. But there's more of a chance we would break through there and test to the top of the channel. Although there is this 100-hour moving average coming up here, which would give it a lot of support. So I'm reasonably optimistic we wouldn't break back into this channel, and we would hold above about 306 or so. So for the time being, that's the lowest I'm really particularly worried about with EOS. Well, that'll about do it for me today. As I always say, this is not investment advice. This is just my opinion. Until next time, don't forget that like and subscribe down below. Good luck with your trades.